Hello, everyone, and welcome to my latest review of Marvel's What If series on Disney Plus. Damien, you need to get Disney Plus. Hope everybody's doing well on this Wednesday morning, early morning for some of us. Quick hellos to those of you who've decided to join me this morning. Corey Suzuki, hello. John Miller, hello. Pie Guy 07, hello. Catherine H, hello. And I'm saying hi to Pie Guy in the future. Hello, future Pie Guy. Sounds like a plot device from The Simpsons all of a sudden. Anyway, what is today's episode? Well, today's episode is the far-fetched theory. What if Killmonger saved Tony Stark? I still think that Killmonger is a stupid supervillain name to this point. And honestly, I'm pretty sure he is an established character in the comic book somewhere, but I still think it's a stupid name. Anyway, many problems. Continuity-wise, logic-wise, plot hole-wise with this particular episode. I will review them as we encounter them. But first, thank you, Catherine H, for the pair throwing me a giant cup of red liquid. I'm going to say it's cranberry juice. I suppose it could also be coffee. Thank you, Catherine. Appreciate it. This, just as a quick summary, this episode combines the plot threads from about 3 different movies and makes plot contrivances so ridiculous that our villain could only win. I might be giving that away, but anyway, let's move on. Shall we start off with the beginning of the first Iron Man movie, where Tony Stark is being given a tour through Afghanistan on the way to or just after a weapons demonstration. And so they're driving along. They recreate just about scene for scene and line for line, or should I say shot for shot, line for line from the original Iron Man movie. And the exact same events take place. Bomb goes off, they get attacked, the soldiers get shot up and attacked. Tony Stark is isolated and alone. All of a sudden, the bomb falls right next to him. It's about to go off, but then Killmonger appears and picks it up and tosses it off into the distance where it explodes, at a safe distance, because somehow a even well-built and athletic human being can pick up a fully sized military piece of equipment and throw it far enough that the explosion occurs with no shrapnel, no blowback, nothing. And I know I'm talking about a comic book thing, but that's not the only problem. Okay, so this is going to be very nitpicky, if you can believe it. I thought to myself when I first saw the idea of this episode, I thought to myself, how old was Killmonger during the events of Iron Man? Because Killmonger isn't exactly an old man. And the first time that we meet Killmonger is in the Black Panther film. And as I said again, well, setting aside the stupidity of the name Killmonger, which I think is stupid, I never found the character of Killmonger all that compelling. Maybe it's only because he was in the one movie. Presumably he's going to somehow come back in the next movie or something. But either way, I didn't find him a very compelling villain. Some people did. I didn't really. Anyway, so how old was Killmonger? Well, this is where I have to do a little bit of real life to fiction extrapolation. So Iron Man came out in 2008. All right. Black Panther came out, in 2018. So just going off of the chronology of the films, I'm going to say, and I'm happy to be corrected, but that there is a 10-year gap between the events of Iron Man 1 and Black Panther. All right. So however old Killmonger is in the Black Panther film, he is 10 years younger here. Now, working backwards from how old Michael B. Jordan actually was when Black Panther came out, and someone, you feel free to correct me, but I have estimated that the character of Killmonger could not be any older than perhaps 23 or 24 at the time of Iron Man. And so at that young age, relatively speaking, he has all of the scars on his body to signify all of his kills that we witness in the Black Panther film. And he is already, at this point in this particular story's chronology, a Navy SEAL Ghost Squad veteran with enough medals on his chest to choke a goat thrapple. I looked up, what is the average age of your Navy SEAL? Average age is 30. 6 to 7 years prior to that, I mean, I don't know anything about the details of military recruiting and service and everything in regards to Navy SEALs, except for what little bit that Ranting Monkey has informed me of in the past after we watched Under Siege. G.I. Jane, sorry. And 6 of one thing, half a dozen of the other. But it doesn't fly. It just doesn't fly to me that at 23, he'd be all the things they say he is at this stage of the game. Again, allowing for the chronology of events to occur in the way that the movies came, etc. Anyway, that's a lot, but I figure I'd get that out of the way now because that's one of my first, what question marks in my head as this episode was presented. Anyway, so he saves Tony Stark from the missile. Tony Stark's like, oh my God, this guy's awesome. And then Killmonger then blows away with Hawkeye-like accuracy a whole bunch of attacking 10 Rings soldiers, apparently. And then he and Tony just walk off into the sunset together, leaving the injured and or dead troopers that died protecting Tony Stark behind. Very admirable. Very admirable. Both of Tony Stark and Killmonger. Anyway, so then the Watcher gives us an overview of exactly what this divergent event has done. It means that there is no Iron Man. It means that there is no Avengers. It means a whole bunch of things that would have happened didn't happen. And so we jump to the press conference of the return and rescue of Tony Stark. This time, obviously not after having been rescued from capture and injury, but just capture or brief problem. And so Killmonger is there, Happy Hogan is there, and Pepper Potts are there at the press conference. And then a bunch of very convenient things happen. First and foremost, Tony recommends Killmonger as his chief of security, which overtakes Happy Hogan's role. Okay, not a big deal. They basically, the press starts asking him questions, and the whole point of this is to show the difference of the Tony Stark after the Iron Man incident versus a Tony Stark that did not go through the Iron Man incident. And so his takeaway from his experience in this instance is not, I need to start, spooling out our military arm of the company. It's to upgrade our military arm of the company and get more militaristic and promote bigger and better weapons to protect our troops. That's the lesson he took away from this, which will lead into what we get into next. Anyway, so he recommends Killmonger as his chief of security. Happy's not happy about that. Pictures and everything else. And so the lady and the reporter lady, played by Leslie Bibb. Let's see, where does she show up here? Yeah, there she is. So Leslie Bibb reprises her role as, oh God, I forget the character's name. Anyway, she's the same reporter who's appeared several times in the course of the movies and animated series as the character that she plays, whose name I forget all of a sudden. She, in real life, she's married to Sam Rockwell, who played Justin Hammer in Iron Man 2. Anyway, she starts asking questions about, where did this Killmonger guy come from? And she asks, gosh, he sort of showed up out of nowhere since his entire unit was 400 miles away from where Killmonger was. It's almost like he knew it was going to happen. And he's like, yeah, I did know it was going to happen because, you see, I knew the secret plan of Obadiah Stane to assassinate Tony Stark because I've got all these documents and proof and everything, and I've got inside intel that shows that Obadiah Stane was working with the 10 Rings to assassinate Tony Stark. And so, okay, again, setting aside the fact that this character would likely be too young for any of these events to take place in the first place, he also just happen to have access somehow to secret information and documents and things that never explain how he got that access or anything. He just has it. As you'll see, everything lines up perfectly to help our main character / villain succeed at everything over the course of this entire episode without hindrance. Anyway, so he exposes Obadiah Stane. He ingratiates himself to Tony Stark. And he's like, oh my gosh, he's a hero. He's a great guy. Look at all those medals. Look at all those ribbons. Again, approximately 23 or 24 years old. I'm not saying it's impossible, because I don't know enough about, military procedure and ranking and everything else to say, but it just seems a bit out there. Anyway, so they have a party and everything, and they're like drinking and getting all to know each other and all that, and being all very Tony Stark and buddy. So basically, Killmonger is kind of taking the place of the Rhodey character or role that we saw in Iron Man 1. He's just sort of like replaced Rhodey with Killmonger now. Anyway, Pepper is suspicious of this guy. Apparently, she's one of only 2 people in the entire show who are, her and the reporter. And so she goes off and asks Rhodey for some information on the guy, like, how legit is this guy? And Rhodey's like, well, he distinguished himself in the SEALs and a Ghost Squad. And he's done all these things, and he seems pretty legit. And he's done this, that, and the other. And she's like, oh my gosh, I guess he's like a superhero kind of thing. And Rhodey's like, yeah, well, I guess that's just the way life is. And, Tony's Tony and yada, yada. So she's still suspicious. Tony takes Killmonger down to his garage. Now, not the Iron Man factory, but just his garage. And he starts talking to him about, like, what'd you want to do, or where'd you come from, or what's your story? And in the process of this, he shows off some of his, Tony does, some of his other weapon design things to Killmonger. And this will come in to play later, kind of, sort of, except that Tony says that this is the handheld version of launching the Jericho rocket. But we see this weapon or something that looks a lot like it later, but it is not the Jericho rocket launcher. Anyway, it's kind of confusing. Anyway, so then, Killmonger starts telling Tony about his doctoral thesis on, autonomous drones that he was working on at MIT or whatever, because I don't remember whatever exposition was given to us about Killmonger in the Black Panther film, but at least in here, he's not only a super duper Navy SEAL, has killed everybody and their brother in the course of his career, Ghost Squad, super soldier without actually being a super soldier, and he's also a genius roboticist doctorate. Yeah, okay. So anyway, he's the best thing that ever was made. So he starts telling Tony about this thesis he had on autonomous drones and everything, and Tony's like, hey, I will help you fulfill this dream of making these autonomous drones. And the autonomous drones are, and they even make this joke, I'll give them the credit, the autonomous drone designs are Gundam. And Tony's like, I'll help you make this, but it looks like we're about to make the most expensive Gundam model in the world. I thought that was kind of funny. A little bit. Anyway, so we start making drones. Gosh, now, where did we see manufacturing drones as a potential military thing before? Gosh, was that Iron Man 2? Yeah, so basically take the plot of Iron Man 2, but make that the first Iron Man movie. Take Whiplash, but make him into Killmonger, and take Justin Hammer, but make him into Tony Stark. And that's kind of where we're at this point. Thank you, John Miller. Can rename him from Killmonger to Gary Stu? Is that a joke I'm supposed to know? Gary. Oh, Mary Sue. Oh, I see. Yes. Yeah, exactly. Sorry, it took me a second. I don't hear Gary Stu that often. Yeah, in this particular episode, everything is laid out perfectly for Killmonger to succeed at everything forever without hindrance. It's really quite remarkable, and also lazy writing, but it gets worse. It gets worse, trust me. Okay, so they start working on Gundam Model 001. we see them like, doing Iron Man type building stuff, making things, technology, science, and industry. And then they make their first model. And then we go through the sort of like very brief montage, not even a montage, but sequence of testing the model. And so the plot point here is that Jarvis and the computer is analyzing all of Killmonger's fight moves and things and programming those into the drone. And that is supposed to tell the drone how to fight correctly or effectively. Anyway, so they're laying around trying to figure out, gosh, how are we going to power these things? The power source has to be self-contained, and it has to be this, that, and the other. And of course, the robots aren't very sturdy. What are we going to do? And Tony muses about, hey, what if I shrunk down an arc reactor? Nah, that's a stupid idea. And he just ignores that. And then Killmonger's like, hey, what about using vibranium to power this thing? It would have, a perpetual energy source and everything else. And Tony's like, yeah, that'd be nice, except my dad used all the last of the vibranium in the war. And then Killmonger's like, not all of it. And he pulls out his ceremonial ring. And Tony's like, where the heck did you get that? And he's like, oh, I got connections and things and stuff. And so Tony throws the vibranium ring into an analyzer, and he analyzes it. And now I don't know what he intends to do by analyzing it, because is he going to synthesize vibranium, or he's just analyzing vibranium? I don't know what the point of that was, but because the information on vibranium, I'm pretty sure his dad would already have in storage somewhere. If not vibranium itself, at least the analysis thereof. So yeah, anyway, so yeah, it's vibranium. And so then he's like, to Pepper, we got to get a whole bunch of vibranium. And they're like, where are we going to get vibranium? They're like, well, there's one person I know that can get vibranium on the black market, and that'd be Ulysses Claw. And they're like, really? You want to deal with Ulysses Claw, black market, criminal, and everything else? And they're like, well, this is for the greater good, and I can use Rhodey as our liaison to make it legitimate with the U.S. military by working with a black marketer for vibranium or something. Anyway, so we end up in the setting of Age of Ultron, where we meet Ulysses Claw for the first time, played again by Andy Serkis, who does. Andy Serkis is probably one of the most practiced voice actors on the planet. So for the little time that he's in this, he works perfect. And everything sounds very natural with him. I will say the person playing Pepper Potts, her delivery is very wooden in places, and in particular, scene upcoming, too wooden. Otherwise, the voice actors in here did pretty good overall. The only ones returning, as far as I could tell, were Chadwick Boseman as T'Challa, Michael B. Jordan as Killmonger. I think Jon Favreau was there for Happy Hogan. And, Paul Bettany came back for Jarvis, and Leslie Bibb came back for the reporter. And Don Cheadle was there for Rhodey as well. I think that's all the returning cast members. Everybody else was done by a stand-in. Tony Stark, Thunderbolt Ross, Pepper Potts, etc. So anyway, so we're on the ship, and Ulysses Claw is negotiating with Rhodey to sell him vibranium. Okay. And it should be noted, because it should come up later, is that Rhodey's got a little earpiece in his ear as he's talking to Ulysses Claw, because he's, being monitored. And Ulysses Claw shows that he has a vibranium spear from the Dora Milaje. Why? Just to show off that he got it, I guess. Because then in the next moment, he opens up the big vault, and there's actual tons of vibranium. So why make the spear a significant portion of well, it'll come up later, but here's the thing that doesn't come up later. What happens to the spear? Rhodey's got a little earpiece in here because he's being monitored back at base or whatever, right? Everything's being recorded. But anyway, so moving on. All of a sudden, in the middle of this exchange, something happens. There's a whole bunch of activity. There's like a whole bunch of people being fought, and then the lights go out, and then, oh my gosh, there's like a shooting, and somebody's attacking them, and oh my gosh, what's going on? So who'd be attacking them? Oh my God, it's the Black Panther. Yes, the Black Panther is here to stop the exchange of vibranium, his country's valuable resource, to the American government by an illegal black marketeer. And this is the Chadwick Boseman Black Panther, who I also have to assume is somewhere in his early 20s at this point, not knowing exactly what T'Challa's age was supposed to be. But either way, so he's currently the Black Panther. I thought T'Chaka was the Black Panther at this point in time, his father, the king. But anyway, so T'Challa attacks to stop them from exchanging the vibranium, and he takes down all the soldiers and Ulysses Claw's guys and everything. And then all of a sudden, oh my gosh, there's an attack, and all their veins start going up, and oh, they're crippled. Rhodey and T'Challa are crippled by some sound thing. And you know, if you've watched the first Iron Man movie, you may recall that such a thing was used on Tony Stark at one point. But then he pulls out this gun, which, I mean, it doesn't look exactly like the Jericho missile launcher handheld thing, but I mistook it one for the other at first because I thought that would make some sort of like comeback. It doesn't, as far as I can recall. Anyway, so he sonics them into submission, and then he kills T'Challa. He like gives him a super duper sonic blast and basically, like, I don't know, explodes his brain or something. And then he takes T'Challa's glove and then uses it for himself to try it out. And then he kills Rhodey with the Black Panther glove. Right? Okay. And then he places the weapon that killed T'Challa in Rhodey's hand. So the whole thing is to set up that Rhodey was killed by the Black Panther, and Rhodey killed the Black Panther, and so framing the Black Panther for Rhodey's death and vice versa. All right. And then Claw's there still because these two are working in cahoots with one another. And now there's that spear. Now remember, Rhodey had an earpiece in and everything was being recorded. Right? Because he's still working for the military, the U.S. military at that point. So moving on, these two are in cahoots. They planned it the whole time that they're going to set up the military to take the vibranium, and apparently also to set up the Black Panther to show up and to frame Black Panther for Rhodey's death. All of this was just known was going to happen exactly as it happened. All part of the plan. Anyway, so T'Challa is taken back to Wakanda for a funeral, and Rhodey is given a funeral in his country. It's all very somber and everything. There's the king, there's the queen, and there's the little sister, who at least they made decidedly younger, since she couldn't have been as old as she was in the Black Panther movie. Now she's like, I don't even know how old she's supposed to be, 12, 13 maybe? But yet this character, she might be voiced by the same actress. I don't know, but either way, apparently at this age, she still has all the intelligence and technical knowledge of her adult self, as we'll see later. Anyway, so very somber. James Rhodes is dead. Tony's ticked off. And then Killmonger walks in with the spear. Okay, now remember, he brings the spear with him. I want to keep making this point because it becomes very important as things go on. He comes in with the spear, and he's like, we need to get revenge for Rhodey. We got to go to war with Wakanda. And Tony's like starting to get suspicious of things because Tony's like, yeah, I don't trust you. You know why I don't trust you? Is because the entire interaction on the boat was recorded by Jarvis. The earpiece in Rhodey's head, or in his ear, I should say, was a connection to Jarvis and recorded the entire incident down to holographic representations of everybody, including Killmonger killing Rhodey. And Killmonger's like, well, heck, I guess you caught me, boss. And then Tony's like, oh, yeah, well, I'm going to take you down. And Killmonger's like, oh, yeah, you and what army, dude? You're no fighter. You're just a rich kid, etc. And Tony's like, yeah, well, I've got a Hulk, and by that he brings out the autonomous droid. I want to say droid, but drone. Anyway, okay, so let's just think about this for a second. Highly trained military assassin guy in a sealed off room with non-Iron Man, non-super-powered, non-protected Tony Stark with a big robot fighting Killmonger to kill him. Do you all recall one element of the Tony Stark home that was ever present and omniscient and super intelligent? I will get to that in a moment. Anyway, so the fight continues, and Tony's like, haha, the robot's been programmed with your own moves, so it already knows what you're going to do. And he says, well, then I guess I'm going to have to freestyle it. Because that's what cool people say. So he changes up his tactics or something and jumps on him and fights him with the vibranium spear and all this. And of course, eventually he takes down the entire robot and then throws the spear and pins Tony to the wall. Did I already? Maybe I'm not jumping ahead here a little bit. Yeah, so he kills the robot and he throws the spear into Tony's arm after killing the robot. Again, let us think for a moment. Is there something special about Tony Stark's house? Some integral component? Okay. So anyway, they go back and forth for a second on stuff, and Tony's like, you'll never win. And he's like, oh man, I wish I didn't have to kill you, but I guess I have to. And then he kills Tony Stark. I don't know how exactly he kills him by just pushing a spear that's piercing his shoulder deeper into his shoulder, unless, I suppose there's some really important vein there, but Tony Stark is not pierced anywhere as far as I can tell other than his shoulder with the spear. And so Tony Stark is dead. The next scene is the crime scene and him being zipped up into a body bag. And Pepper Potts and Happy Hogan, I understand, the old Jessica Rabbit thing, I'm not bad, I'm just drawn that way. No emotion. No, let's see if I can get a freeze frame of their expressions here. No tears, no sadness, no, not in the voice acting, not in the animation. Tony Stark is dead in his own house by a Wakandan spear. Therefore, Wakanda did it somehow, some way. And nobody asks any questions. Oh, and by the way, it's just, that thing I was talking about, Tony Stark's house and everything, the super intelligent artificial intelligence Jarvis that would be watching over everything, that upon seeing his boss murdered by Killmonger would have immediately called the authorities, sent a copy of the home security to Happy, to Pepper, on everything that we know about Jarvis, his capabilities and his monitoring of everything. Doesn't matter. No, Jarvis's memory was wiped somehow. And we never hear from Jarvis again. Oh, well. Anyway, yeah. Okay, so anyway, Jarvis wasn't there to do anything to help his boss or to monitor or to call the authorities or to notify anybody or anything. When in every other instance we've ever seen Jarvis operate, he's almost completely autonomous. And in the case of Tony Stark being under threat or being killed like that or something else, wouldn't immediately take action to expose his killer. Nope, doesn't happen. And Pepper is emotionless. Happy, ironically enough, is also emotionless over the death of his boss, best friend, love interest of Pepper, everything. Yeah, okay. So anyway, General Ross is like, oh my gosh, these Wakandans, we got to go take them out. This is war. Because General Ross has that authority. Anyway, so they're like, what are we going to do? And General Ross is like, well, we're going to put your drones into production. We're going to go to war with Wakanda with a giant army of your drones. just like in Iron Man 2, where Justin Hammer was making a giant army of drones. And Pepper's like, this is ridiculous. And General Ross is like, well, here's the documents that show I'm now taking over Stark Industries and commandeering it in the name of the federal government. And you're going to make robots for us now, whether you like it or not. You work for me. And she's just like, oh. And Happy's just like, oh, okay. And so then we get montage of building the giant army of robots. And General Ross is like, yes, and now we'll take down Wakanda. This will help us to win the war. Rah, rah, rah. And then so they're flying off to land their invasion army into Africa to get ready to go take on Wakanda. And Ulysses Claw's there. And they don't know where Wakanda is. They still don't know where Wakanda is. Wakanda is still a hidden country at this point. As far as the maps are concerned, it's still just this on the surface, small little territory with a village kind of thing. The vast technological city of Wakanda, etc., is still unknown. But we're going to send a giant army of robots to a country. Yeah, well, I mean, overkill, by name be United States. Anyway, so then Killmonger comes off this jet all by himself. You know, there's no other personnel. There's nobody else watching over anything. It's just Killmonger and Ulysses Claw and planes full of robots. Yeah, so nobody asked any questions as to why is Ulysses Claw here meeting us? What is their relationship? Anyway, so they get together and they go off to find Wakanda because Ulysses Claw knows where Wakanda is, and he shows Killmonger the first time. Here's the barrier. Here's the wall. Here's where Wakanda is. Here's the force shield, and all that. And so Killmonger's like, oh my gosh, I've never found my home before. I mean, it's a very convoluted and complex plan to try to go to war with a country and a power that you've never encountered, know very little about, have only heard stories from your father before he was killed. But Killmonger's very sure he's got something to go after here. Anyway, so he gets all reminiscent about, coming home or finding Wakanda or finding his origins. And then he kills Claw. He just shoots him. And then he carries Claw's body, I guess, through the force field or through the camouflage or whatever towards Wakanda. And then the Dora Milaje just show up and they're like, halt. And he's like, I've brought the killer of your king or your prince or something, or the person who killed your people. And here I am, under my lip, I have the tattoo of a royal born of Wakanda. And so he's taken to the royal chambers and is reunited with his uncle and his aunt and his cousin. And here I am. I'm here to claim my birthright, etc., etc. I know the stories. And the king is just like, okay. No questions, no resistance, no curiosity, just okay. And the only people who are curious, the only people who are suspicious are the princess, let's say, and the queen. They're the only ones who are like, wait a second. So, you'll notice, I mean, and it's just an observable thing. The only people in this entire episode so far who are suspicious, who think critically about things at first, who aren't caught unawares, it's all the women. All the women are the ones who can see through the edifice of the noble Killmonger. Interesting. And only Tony saw through it at the last second because Jarvis told him. Anyway, so they have this whole long, I'm here to serve Wakanda and I'm here to claim my birthright. And the king's like, yes, you will come back. And you remind me a lot of my son and I miss my son. And yeah, well, I'm here to defend Wakanda from these things. And how are we going to do that? And, the robots are on the way. Well, he has a plan, Killmonger does. How does he have this plan? Why does he have this plan? Nobody asked. But what the plan is that the drones are not autonomous. Okay, the drones require a satellite uplink in order to operate and be controlled, even though they're supposed to be autonomous drones, from headquarters or whatever. So the plan is we let all of the drones into Wakanda and then drop the shields behind them, which will interfere with the satellite signal from space and thus shut down all the drones. Yeah, let's do a barrel roll. That's a neat trick. Yeah, so we're just going to shut off all the drones just like that. Now, how does Killmonger know all this? Why aren't they suspicious of the guy who invented the drones, landed in their own airspace with the drones? Why is he here at the same time as the drones? Isn't that a little suspicious? Anyway. And of course, Wakanda doesn't get television, right? So they would have absolutely no idea of Killmonger's connection to Stark or Stark Industries or the death of Tony Stark or any of this. None of that happened. None of that is discoverable at all by the super duper advanced Wakandans. No. Anyway, so the robots are on the march. They've got their plan. They're going to let the robots in and then drop the shields behind them. They're getting ready for war. The queen herself goes out getting ready to fight. She's on the front line while the king sits behind on the balcony and just kind of watches. You know, because T'Chaka has absolutely no experience in combat. T'Chaka has absolutely no skill whatsoever in martial combat. Let's just keep that in mind. Okay, anyway, so they watch the robots on the march. March, robots. Thunderbolt Ross is like, we're going to take out the Wakandans. This is war. And then they're like, okay, now drop the shields. And they drop the shields, and suddenly they lose the signal. Where'd the signal go? Oh, my gosh. Oh, no. And march. Oh, my gosh. I'm here to defend Wakanda. Oh, I love you, my nephew, etc. And the robots are all shut down. Where did that happen? There it is. All the robots are shut down. They're all offline. They all stand down. Everybody's like, yay, we won without a war, without having to fight or anything. And it's like, he's like, thank you, Killmonger, for saving our people and your people and everything. And Killmonger's like, yeah, I'm here to be a good guy. And but of course, Killmonger has a reactivation switch, a little key fob that just happens to have the Stark Industries logo on it because, you know, you want to criminal genius. Anyway, so he reactivates all the drones. And he says, dang that Tony Stark. I guess he had a backup plan. I guess he had a backup transmitter somewhere, somehow, on the other side of the planet, set up for a war he couldn't possibly know was going to come after being murdered. Because that makes sense. Anyway, so then, oh boy, it's going to be wartime. So we jump to the whole battle sequence effectively in the Black Panther film at the end, where, you know, the Black Panther forces are fighting the Killmonger forces. Yeah, so we get a big battle scene in the dark of, ray shields and drones, and everybody fights. And Killmonger jumps onto a techno rhino with his Wakandan spear, and they all go fighting the robots. And it's a big battle, and everybody saves the day, and all the robots are defeated. Yay for him. Big fight scene. Nothing much to say about it. The Queen does a bunch of combat because, as you know, King T'Chaka has absolutely no experience in martial combat. Just so you know. Anyway, so Killmonger saves the day. Yay! And then it's like, I want to protect Wakanda and stuff. And, Killmonger's like, aha, I beat Tony Stark. I beat the oppressive system against me and killed everything. And then he's like, oh boy, here's the mountaintop my father spoke of that I never saw before in my childhood. And the king comes up and says, yes, isn't it beautiful? And he's like, boy, if only all of our brothers and sisters could see this. And he's like, I really want to be the one to protect Wakanda. And the king's like, well, then I guess there's only one thing to do, and that's make you the Black Panther. So Killmonger becomes the Black Panther. He gets the super soldier serum of Wakanda and gets the suit and everything. But in the course of doing the ritual, he goes off to the Dreamlands, or the whatever you want to call it, the afterlife, the Wakandan afterlife. And lo and behold, who does he encounter? Well, he encounters T'Challa. And T'Challa's like, dude, you know that this isn't going to turn out well for you. You stole this power. Power without having earned it will eventually destroy you. And you'll either get your justice on the real world or here. And Killmonger's like, whatever, dude. I'm like badass. And that's it. And so now he's the Black Panther, the evil Black Panther. But nobody knows that he's evil because it's so obvious that he's not evil. It's so obvious that everything that occurred to this point just happened naturally and he had no involvement in it whatsoever. And so he looks out on his new kingdom or whatever. And we go into a little montage of like, oh, Tony Stark will be remembered like, only you can avenge Tony Stark. Aha, avenge. Avenge. And then Pepper Potts is like, oh my gosh, Stark Industries is going to be helping Ross go after Wakanda forever because they keep talking about their next moves against Wakanda and how Stark Industries is going to make more weapons for them. And then Pepper goes off to the office of the Stark Industries and she's like, oh my gosh. Now, at this point, I was thinking, where's S.H.I.E.L.D.? Where's Nick Fury? Where's any of the other global apparatus systems that would be involved in this? Why didn't S.H.I.E.L.D. show up regarding Killmonger? Why didn't they know what was going on? Why weren't they monitoring the exchange between Rhodes and Ulysses Klaue? S.H.I.E.L.D. is a zero factor here. No Coulson, no Fury, nothing. Never are they mentioned. S.H.I.E.L.D. is just not involved in this world at all. But the princess is there, or T'Challa's sister is there, and she's like, oh, I got in here, and look, here I have all of this evidence that Killmonger killed Tony and set this all up, and it's all one big frame job, and I have all the information right here, and I'm sharing it with you. I'm not sharing it with the world, right? I'm not sharing it with my father, the king. I'm not sharing it with the news media or the U.S. military. No. I'm going to share it with Pepper Potts on the sly. Because why? Because things, I guess. Right? And the image here on the little, hollow data pad is him holding the weapon, the sonic weapon that killed T'Challa, that, killed Rhodey. And somehow she has possession of this information. But again, having possession of information that shows that the current Prince of Wakanda is actually the person who assassinated the former prince and set up all the circumstances to create a war between the U.S. and Wakanda. No, she's not sharing this with the people involved. She's not sharing this with the authorities. She's not sharing it with her father, the king, who obviously has no experience in martial combat or politics. And what happens next? Well, I don't know, because girl power, the show's over. What are we going to do about this? Cut the credits. I'm not kidding. That was it. Princess of Wakanda shows Pepper Potts the information showing Killmonger is a liar and an assassin and everything else. And then we cut the credits. Now, is this going to be a part 1 of 2? I assume they're going to continue this in some way. I guess that's what's going to happen in the second part of the season. I'm assuming. Either way, it cuts off so quickly that the first words out of my mouth as I muttered to myself after this finished was, well, that was unsatisfying. And it was. It was just like, okay. Let's see. Marcus says, I like to watch your sad face at the end. Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, his sad face was a sad face. He was really sad. He was super sad. I was sad watching it. But anyway, then we cut the credits and that's it. Yeah. So there you go. Such as it was. That's it. That's the end all be all of that episode. Ridiculously giant plot holes. Tony Stark standing in a room with a trained assassin with no protection holding a drink. Trained assassin actually shoots the robot with his pistol during the course of that fight. You didn't see it in the little freeze frames there because I couldn't capture it. But and why would he shoot the robot with a pistol? He knows everything about its design, and he knows it's, made with vibranium. I guess it was just to make sure the pistol was empty, to explain why he wouldn't shoot Tony. Why wasn't Tony worried about somebody with a gun when he had absolutely no protection against a gun or anything? I don't know. So Killmonger's age, the contrivances that allowed Killmonger to move without any obstacle whatsoever from one act of villainy to the next, with no curiosity or suspicion on anybody's part except for characters who somehow were powerless to act against him. Pepper Potts, powerless to act against Killmonger. Just powerless. He couldn't do anything. The decision's been made. I guess I'm just going to sit here and be... King T'Chaka. I guess everything's fine. This guy shows up out of nowhere with Ulysses Claw dead. I don't go any further than that. I guess everything's fine. Start a war that keeps going for no reason, all on the basis of one person's testimony. Jarvis just takes a powder. Tony Stark doesn't make a backup of the footage of Killmonger killing Rhodey. Rhodey, Tony's best friend. Rhodey, military war hero. Tony just keeps that information to himself, just so he can have a one-on-one with the guy in the giant robot in his private suite. Okay, sure. Yeah, all right. Probably one of the most brainless and insulting of my intelligence episodes of this series. I'm not going to say it's the most intelligence insulting thing I've ever watched before. There's some other things. If you want to know one of the most intelligence insulting things I've ever watched before, you have to go way back in my review playlist to find me talking about The Fall from Netflix. But that's a whole other thing. But there you go. That's it. Not a very interesting story. A what if that requires so many convenient events and turns the history of the MCU on a dime that makes no sense to exist. Right? I mean, if this was what if Tony Stark hadn't been injured in Afghanistan? Right? What if Iron Man never started? How would things proceed from there? Okay, because that is a left turn from the current events. But you're plopping down a character, Killmonger, who is such a minor player in the grand scheme of the MCU, whose presence there makes zero sense unless you just write him in out of nowhere, whose circumstances make absolutely no sense given the timeline of events, and on and on. It wasn't even like a regular what if. It just doesn't make any sense. Now, the one thing I can compare it to is just about any what if that involved Frank Castle. Okay, because Frank Castle is one of the few characters in the Marvel Universe, and I know they have updated his origin story quite a bit, but for the longest time, he was one of the few characters in the Marvel Universe who was tied to a very specific historical period of time. And that's the Vietnam War. It wasn't like Captain America, who got the super soldier serum, so he could be far, far older than the events in which he, came to prominence, and he's still young. No, Frank Castle is always tied to the Vietnam War. So having a what if with Frank Castle doing certain things at certain times in history, and he's still technically a Vietnam War vet, you sort of have to wave away the fact that he'd probably be elderly at this point, and it makes no sense. Okay. Killmonger's not that. Killmonger's not some rugged old veteran or something. We're not sort of hand-waving away a little bit of extra age on the guy. No, we're going backwards to a time where he had to be in his early 20s. And he does all of this. Doctoral thesis at MIT, Navy SEAL, Ghost Squad, all the medals, all the scars, all the kills, seen battle up the yin-yang and back again. Yeah, no. Even within the bounds of comic bookdom and the MCU larger-than-life stuff, makes no sense. And then everybody just dies, and nobody asks any questions, and he's just Perfect, practically perfect in every way is the supervillain that nobody can stop. Okay. I think I've said my piece about this episode. My least favorite of all of them so far. And I think that might be saying something since I wasn't that impressed with Captain Carter. But yeah, this one was just so ridiculously, like I say, insulting of my intelligence. Gonna take a few comments from you guys if you have anything to say, and then I'll wrap up. Marquez, keep the Punisher out of the MCU, please. I'd be fine with the Punisher in the MCU, but he'd have to be on the fringe. On the fringe. I was fine with him having a TV show that where all the events of those TV shows were kind of happening outside of the major events of the MCU. I'd be fine with that, you know. Or if they have something where, again, they just sort of tangentially mention the MCU events and characters, but they don't get them too far involved, because as soon as you put Frank Castle inside of superhero stuff and cosmic things and Frankencastle, oh God. It just doesn't. And also Marcus says Thomas Jane, best Punisher. As far as dedication to the character, yes. The movie he did for the Punisher, not my favorite example of the Punisher. Dirty Laundry, however, the Thomas Jane short film, if you look it up, is probably one of the best Punisher stories ever put to film. It's unfortunate that neither Netflix nor the big Hollywood studio movies really even came close to that, which is a shame. It's not that difficult. The Punisher is a complex character, but telling a story about the Punisher accurate to the character in the comics, not that tough. Maybe that's their problem with it. They want something more complex. Let's see. John Miller says this episode is almost fanfic levels of bad. It is. It really is. It's like, how can we make Killmonger the criminal genius mastermind of all time? Well, the only way we can do that is make everyone around him an idiot. That was basically the formula. How can we take all of these established characters, remove their brains and their backstories, and just let Killmonger waltz through every complication? There you go. Bridget. I'm glad I dropped these shows. They went down here after the end of S.H.I.E.L.D. You mean Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.? Maybe? I mean, it depends on the TV show, depends on the season. Daredevil season 1 is a masterpiece. As far as Marvel television goes, Daredevil season 1 is probably the gold standard, is how do you tell a mature Marvel story on television or in a episodic format. Just about every other of the Marvel shows on Netflix, and I've done reviews on them all at one point or another, were all meh. And what they did with the characters and the events were Luke Cage season, well, the first half of Luke Cage season 1 was all right. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., it's one of those guilty pleasures, because as soon as they untethered themselves from the events of the MCU and started doing their own thing, it got better. And became much more popcorn, sort of comic booky. And so I appreciated it more at the end than I did in the seasons leading up, except for the big, switch off when Hydra is revealed to be running S.H.I.E.L.D. and everything. That was cool. Let's see. John Miller again. There was a great animated Punisher. Punisher and Black Widow was from the same group that released the anime style Iron Man and X-Men. Was a fun romp to watch. I watched a little bit of that. I never saw the whole thing, so I don't have an opinion on that. I was always kind of sketchy on Marvel animation because some of their projects worked and some didn't, like Hulk versus Wolverine, that sort of collection of short animated films was pretty cool. Their Doctor Strange animated film from a while back was all right. The Thor movie by itself was okay. And of course, the next Avengers, Stephen Torres, I love Punisher Warzone, an all-time B movie. Ray Stevenson had the physicality and the look of a comic book Frank Castle. The guy who played, I forget his name, but he's, the guy from Seinfeld who plays Microchip. He did a great job. He's the only so far physically accurate Microchip ever put on film at this point. There's a lot of things about Warzone I liked. I didn't like what they did with Jigsaw. I didn't like Jigsaw's brother sidekick, Looney Bin Jim. They just bring that up. And a lot of the sequences in that movie, the CGI blood and effects, the music video types. Like I said, the first 10, 15 minutes of Warzone, I thought were pretty good when he raids the mob party and everything. But there's a whole lot of that just didn't click. Like if you mixed the Thomas Jane Punisher movie and Warzone together to a certain extent, you'd have a fairly good Punisher movie. You take all the good bits from each, but Warzone by itself, it's entertaining. But as a Punisher fan, I come off it going kind of like, so. And let's see, just a couple more things, and then I'm going to wrap things up. Texas Attorney, I don't understand the lack of Jarvis intervention in the house. He would have launched the different suits to protect Tony. Okay, there were no Iron Man suits. You got to remember, there were no Iron Man suits in this reality. Iron Man never existed. So there were no suits for Jarvis to launch because we're in a reality where Iron Man never came to be. But Jarvis can call 911. He can send a video of what's going on in the house to Pepper's cell phone and Happy and the police and Rhodey. I mean, this is Jarvis we're talking about. Even if he couldn't physically intervene in the events, he had every capability of doing all of these things, since we just know from the movies that even before, as soon as Tony comes back from Afghanistan in the first movie, before he's even done any Iron Man stuff, he just says, hey, Jarvis, do this, order that, this, that, and the other. There's no reason why Jarvis could not have intervened in a million different ways, but didn't, because he didn't, and then was just conveniently erased so that he never could, quote unquote, testify against Killmonger. So anyway, everybody, I'm going to call it there. Hope you enjoyed. Hope you found it useful or entertaining in some way, shape, or form. If you'd like to hear more from me, I'll be doing a Sunday stream, surprisingly enough, this Sunday at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern, doing part 2 of The Jedi Temple. This next part will deal with equity, because the first one was justice. Now we have equity, and we'll have diversity and inclusion going forward. So we'll learn more about how to become a real Jedi, Jedi. If you'd like to watch the first part of that, you can find that on the channel right now. But beyond that, everyone, oh yeah, and just a reminder, I'm not doing a TEDx on Thursday. I did the TEDx on Monday with Drunken Uncle, which you can find on my channel right now if you missed it. So I'll be doing a TEDx again next Thursday. I'm taking the rest of the week in the extra time to work on a different project, which I keep alluding to, but not giving any details on, because I want to make sure I actually finish the thing before I get too much on selling it to other people. Anyway, everyone, thank you for joining me. I hope you are all having a good day. Hope you all have a good rest of your week. If I don't talk to you till then, hope you are all safe and well. If you're not well, please get well soon, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.